So I'd love to be able to bring you a big update on where the economic stimulus negotiations are, but essentially the update is there is no update. Let's go ahead and throw Jake Sherman's tweet up there. This is from yesterday. Reality. Neither the House nor Senate is in session in a meaningful way. Dead quiet here in the Capitol. Not a single public news event on the schedule. As far as we know, there was no meeting between the leaders who have been, negotiating behind the scenes on this, which is kind of not a surprise. I mean, the president's sort of, delusional executive orders, which aren't going to do a whole lot, have taken all of the wind out of the sails of any potential actual deal.
Yeah, and I made some calls yesterday trying to figure out, I'm like, hey, what's going on here exactly? And it's exactly how Jake pointed out. Nothing of any substance. McConnell spoke on the floor. Schumer spoke on the floor. A lot of the senators aren't even there. Secretary Mnuchin during the briefing yesterday was like, no, we have not met with Pelosi or Schumer since the executive order. We're ready to meet if they call. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Once again, because as I understood it, this executive order, and this is what they'll tell you behind the scenes, this is not supposed to be the actual way that much of this is going to be enacted. It's more a shot across the bow at Congress, at the Democrats saying, no, look, this executive order, we're going to be doing this as a way of negotiating, bringing you back to the negotiating table, has not yet worked.
They're not at the negotiating table.
I think the issue, too, some fault does lie on Schumer and Pelosi because, again, I don't understand what they are doing. And if you look at just the way that the conversation has devolved at this point, I'll point to an old friend, Senator Ted Cruz. Let's throw his tweet up there on the screen.
I thought he was a populist now.
Oh, yeah. No, he's a libertarian populist, remember?
That's
so
right.
Ed Markey, who is locked in his own primary battle right now, he says, give every person in our country $2,000 a month for the duration of the pandemic, $2,000 a month for 3 months after that, $2,000 a month retroactive to March. Ted Cruz, in a very original form of argumentation, he says, why be so cheap? Give everyone $1 million a day, every day, forever, 3 soy lattes and a foot massage. We have magic money tree, and we should use it. Something particularly drives me crazy about this because that exact same line of argumentation could be used for unemployment insurance, right? That could be used for any cash assistance whatsoever from the government. The whole point.
Or the trillions that have been propping up the stock market. How about that?
The Paycheck Protection Program or any sort of government action. And this is something that they do, which drives me nuts, which is like, so you're conflating unlimited money with the idea of giving any money whatsoever. Okay, so does that mean the government should give money to none of its citizens? Go run on that platform, see how it works out for you.
Yeah.
And it's just the fundamental fallacy of this idiot form of argumentation, which is meant to get retweeted by like Charlie Kirk, and all these other people out there. And it's ludicrous. That's really all it is. It's also embarrassing because in the middle of a pandemic, would you rather be Ed Markey whenever you're facing the American people, or would you rather be Ted Cruz? Good luck in 2024.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think this is a preview of the position that they're all likely to take if there is a Biden administration, right? You'll see a million more tweets like original, making the one joke tweets like this, like congratulations. But on the negotiations, I don't know why the White House would think that these executive orders would bring Democrats back to the table, because you and I both know it's not like either Democrats or Republicans in Congress actually want to govern.
No.
Their greatest desire is to be able to shift the blame and not have to do anything.
Yes.
So the White House has basically been like, great, we'll do some crappy nothing, and then we can take all the blame, and that takes all the pressure off of them to do anything because they don't actually care. I mean, that's the reality. They care about their own political survival. They care about what their donors want. They care about what their ideology dictates, which is what you see in part there with Ted Cruz. And on the Democratic side, look, they don't have any reason to come to the table because now Republicans and the White House in particular completely own this entire mess.
Which you don't want to do.
No.
And that's the real issue, which is I was looking, and I think they've seriously miscalculated because I think Pelosi and Schumer are very content to let the country burn, right? They'll be like, hey, look, November, only 83 days away. Joe Biden is sitting pretty in the polls. We know now you can take they can basically do what they did with the shutdown. Trump tried this during the shutdown. What was it, 2 years ago, something like that? Whenever he was like, fine, I'll take responsibility. I'll shut it down. And Schumer and Pelosi were like, okay. Fine, yeah, great. And he did. And then it was a total disaster. Didn't get anything of what he wanted. Ended up compromising, ending the shutdown. No wall still. It's been 3 years and almost 4 years since he's been in office. And you can just see that this seems to be very much the same situation where as the more that we've learned about this executive order, the implementation of it could very well be a disaster. There's only 5 weeks, apparently, in FEMA. This is if the states kick in funding of enough unemployment insurance in terms of the funds that are actually within there. What's to stop them from just saying, okay, fine, let it run out, and then you'll own the implementation failures, you'll own so much of the fallout. That's generally how the American people look at the president in a time of crisis. They're not going to blame Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, no matter how many negative advertising that you're going to put out there.
Yeah, and look, I want to be hopeful about how quickly these benefits, which are still reduced unemployment benefits, could be implemented. $300 from the feds. States are supposed to kick in $100. They're not getting any additional funding from the government. That's going to be very hard to do. I want to be hopeful about it, but I also want to be realistic. We saw the problems of just the implementation last time around.
Right.
We saw the lineups. We saw the glitches. Some states worse than others. And so to add this on top of it, it seems very unlikely that this is going to go smoothly. I saw an expert analysis who deals with unemployment benefits, who actually knows the mechanics of how this is going to work. White House officials were saying, oh, it'll be 1 to 2 weeks until this is up and running. And she was like, you have lost your mind.
Exactly.
There is absolutely no way that this is going to be up and running in 1 to 2 weeks. So I just want to set people's expectations here. This is unlikely to go smoothly, if it goes at all. And your point, too, about how long it will last, this is not like an indefinite pool of money. This is a very finite amount of resources that is only going to be a stopgap measure. And, again, it's at this reduced amount. In some states, it'll be half of what people were receiving before. So it's a really bad situation. And, of course, people already missed several weeks of that unemployment plus up benefit. So a lot of folks are going to be in dire straits. And as usual, Wall Street Journal has another write-up about how millennials, how young Americans are the ones who are being hit the hardest. Of course, many graduated out into the financial crisis or the aftermath of the financial crisis. One of the things they reveal in this article, which I hadn't seen the numbers on before, is that even people who graduated from college like 2017, 2018 were still dramatically impacted by the collapse in the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, people who are graduating in 2009, 2010, 2011. That damage has continued for this entire generation, and now they're being devastated again. I mean, they interview a number of people who, one woman, she'd been finally getting it together. She's working 2 jobs, 70 hours a week, trying to pay off her student loans, trying to be able to build a life. And now one of those jobs was at Massage Envy. Of course, that gets cut out from under her. And now she's back to square one, trying to struggle just to make it. And this is someone who should be in kind of coming into the prime of her career, around 30 years old. And instead, she's set back to the drawing board. A college-educated person, too.
Yeah, and that is the story of the whole generation, really, which is that, you came in at the worst time, then you graduated into it, if not a dramatic unemployment situation, an underemployment situation. Why does she need to work 2 jobs in the first place, right? And then, even then, in terms of the skills, it sets you back for untold numbers of years. If you're nearly 30 years old and you're still worrying about paycheck to paycheck living in debt, you're never going to accumulate wealth. You're never going to be able to start a family. You're never going to be able to start any of the things that you deserve to. I think I said yesterday, it's an American right, and I really believe that. And we can just see that over and over again, the youngest members of our society are just being devastated and destroyed by this crisis in particular. And that's what bothers me the most about the shenanigans in Washington, both from Schumer and Pelosi and from the White House, which is, this isn't a joke. People's lives are being ruined day after day after day. Every day that this continues to go on, permanent job loss begins to tick up. The more that you dig into some of these jobs reports and the jobs numbers, it's horrible, because you can see small business failure. You can see every single one of those represents 10 years work of work lost just forever. I mean, banks, evictions, the lack of ability for upward mobility. So people are living at home. I was just reading one of the, homicide is up by 40% in 20 major cities over the last year, when it was only up 6% in a similar time period. And arguments out of anger and frustration are one of the number one reasons, which is that people are just mad. People are pissed off.
Yeah.
And you can't underestimate the toll this takes on you as a society.
That is so true. And that's, of course, not to erase any personal responsibility.
No,
these things are connected. I mean, when the society is pushed to its limits, pushed to the breaking point. Yeah. And as if they haven't seen, we saw what happened in Chicago yesterday, right? If you don't think this country is a powder keg, I don't know what sort of bubble you're living in. It's absolutely insane. And so, I saw yesterday from Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks, their analysts believe that somewhere around 40% of America's 30 million small businesses will be permanently closing by Labor Day.
Yeah.
40%. What does that look like? What does that look like for jobs? What does that look like for the labor market? What does that look like just for our streetscape and the vitality of our communities? If that's one thing that we've learned over these past several decades, where those sorts of things, community vitality was completely devalued, all of the life sucked down at these towns, and you end up with this deep well of despair and lack of meaning and lack of purpose. And oh, by the way, workers getting completely screwed because, in another story that we've been looking at, Amazon comes and takes over everything. You have no competition in the labor market. Amazon now looking to take over the malls that have been abandoned in the retail apocalypse.
Bleak.
It is so bleak. So even your local mall now, like the downtown's already been sucked dry out to the local mall. Now the local mall is going under and Amazon's coming in there. Like that is the hellscape that we're looking at. And Congress, they're not doing anything right now about it.
Make some calls. All right.
More rising for you after this.